Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, here's one of my latest acquisitions we'll talk about. I've got several other machines I've just purchased recently at great expense, of course. And we're going to talk about this particular unit that was, I'm not sure the exact name of it. I'm going to try and hunt up. I may have paperwork on this or not. These pop up from time to time. I got this through the Radionic Association in England. And as a used item, unfortunately, no paperwork. This is an electrical unit. It has a wire here. This is to connect to another machine. This doesn't connect. A lot of people like to use this type of wire as well. With this kind of connectors. Of course, all this kind of wiring is no good. We have very unique psychotronic wiring we have now to carry these signals, which are unique. This is a very electric machine, and we're going to open this up for Patreon and All Access members. So if you want to see what's inside many different units, you have to be a Patreon and All Access member to see all these amazing technologies inside, because the big question is what makes all this stuff work? Now, this is an electric machine. We'll show you in the back here. This is an electrical plug, which I'll have to get going here. Here's another one of those particular plugins like over here to plug into different devices. And this was used with a potentiizer and other things, which I do have. I have several of their instruments. This is made by the Mapleton Trust, I believe. Now, the Mapleton Trust, and, you know, it'd be nice to keep track of all these people and to know about them, what they did, and have a history of it. I intend on trying to do this in the future, but it's a lot of time and energy, and this is one of many projects I would like to try and fund, which is the financing for writing books on everybody. There's no official books on anyone. Nothing on Abrams, nothing on Drown, nothing on anything. There's no books talking about them. Della War, other people. These are all people that should be noted in something that a professional organization should be doing, and they're not, unfortunately. The problem is everybody is very understaffed. Most of the people involved in these organizations are probably older people. There's not much motivation. Most people that I can see in the different associations around the world are really there just to promote themselves. They're there to make money. They have no background, no love for anything, and are quite delusional, and many of them are even dangerous. So that's the same old story, as is the cycle of this life and what's going on here. But this is electric, and as I said, in further reviews of this, I will plug it in and we'll play with it a little. This does say DC microamps. Of course, it would be micro again. Any type of, quote, radionic subtle energy physics energy is not something that is electrical in nature or electromagnetic. So it's going to be very microampish if you're doing anything. Now, it is an interesting little unit that apparently works by putting your witness on one or all of these plates. So you put your actual target here, and then you dial in the actual frequency through this dial. You would turn it on, and then you would turn this dial with holding a pendulum. And so if I have my pendulum around here, I don't seem to have it handy. Okay. But you would then turn the dial here to adjust the kind of microamps you want to send to this particular witness. And you can do that with 4 different witnesses, which is nice. And you have 4 different dials, 4 different on and off switches. And of course, here's the main switch that you would trigger, and you'll see a light come on here, the green light, etc. But you can broadcast microamps to up to 4 people. So it's kind of a nice little unit if you want to use this kind of dialing. Again, we're getting into microamps. We're really getting into Hertzian fields, no matter how micro they are. So again, you're talking about more of a frequency and Hertzian frequency and not a radionic energy, which has no electromagnetics to it. So we do have to understand that and understand the reality of that kind of energy. And of course, this is the problem with radionics. Radionics manufacturers, researchers have given up trying to figure out what radionic, quote, energies is, the subtle energy physics of it. I'm the only one that has figured it out, knows what it is, how to use it, how to amplify it, etc. So I'm the only one that's ever done that. So, and of course, continues to research in this area. But I don't really have any research to do. I know exactly what these energies are, how to grab them, manifest with them, etc. It's just a matter of developing this. Now, any real radionics practitioner agrees with this and understands when you explain it to him. One of the famous ones is Hieronymus, Thomas Galen Hieronymus, stated in his books that alloptic energy, which he called it, was not electromagnetic in nature. So we do have to understand all that and understand what's going on with the entire reality of it. So, and we can assist anybody who wants to know that. We have our courses coming out here soon, and it's a multi-phase course of subtle energy physics, understanding gnosis, meaning you got to think right. If you don't think right, you can't get consciousness technology to work. Well, that's right. And the bottom line is we go then into the practical tuning and how to use a radionic instrument and the many variations of it. So it's a very in-depth course, which really is the only course of its type on the planet. And we're very happy to bring this into reality. So watch for that coming soon, as well as all of our new technology with our special wiring, special broadcasting capacities, and just cool stuff. So the whole idea is that here's yet, I don't know how many other people collect radionic equipment, etc. I have many, many machines from all the great people. I have 2 Hieronymus machines, one from the 1940s or early 50s. Very rare. And so many other ones, Delaware, Abrams, Drowney, and all the other people. So, and I have opened them up, looked at them, and I'm doing research with them as well. And it's very interesting. And it gives you a great view of the technology of radionics, which people ignore. So how are you going to make instruments unless you know what the basis behind them are? And there's very little information left. A lot of that's been suppressed. And it goes on and on and on. And of course, this kind of sensing consciousness machinery and technologies go back thousands of years. Modern times, people like to state that Albert Abrams, the wealthy, or came from a wealthy merchant Jewish family in San Francisco, was the first one to kind of put out these different machines. And there's still these out there, and there are even some in museums. So it's very, very interesting to find out what's going on there. Then, of course, the baton was picked up after Abrams' fairly young death in his middle to late 60s by Ruth Drown, who was then persecuted and brought her technology over to England, where it was able to grow and survive through the persecution that she went through, as so many other people were persecuted, like Wilhelm Reich, etc. So we just, it's the same old story with all of that. So what do we know to the facts of all that stuff? So it's very poorly researched, very poorly moved on. Of course, these would make fantastic and exciting movies and specials, and we're working on crowdfunding those types of things as well. So someone needs to go out there and do the research, which is what I'm doing. And we need to get some people behind us to assist all these things. And like everything else in life, it's not really, there is a will and there is a way, but the will and the way require the buckaroos, people. Well, we don't live on air. The cost of living is outrageous, and money is required if you expect to spend months or even years doing this kind of research. So so let's go back to this unit. You've got your main switch right here. This turns it on, activates everything. The green light comes on. These are off now. But then you have it. You've got this for this, this for this, this for this, and this for this. So and they have 4 separate tuning dials here. And there are potentiometers underneath there. I've opened this and looked at it, but as I said, those that want to see the inside need to support our work. This was not free. Neither is all the other units I've got. I've invested quite a pretty penny in these rare technologies, and we continue to search these out. So, and there's very little talked about in any area whatsoever that we are dealing with. So, and of course it has this meter here. Now, I'm not sure what this meter does. When you turn this, does this bump up? As I said, I've got to get this hooked up to electricity, and we'll have a long, detailed look at this and the inside of it and everything else for those particular supporters, for those people who are part of All Access, the Radionic Institute, those who support us on Patreon and other places. These are all critically important support areas out there. But another interesting, and again, this is by the Mapleton Trust, which I'm trying to get more information on. They were very active apparently in the 90s, but this is a British company, and I don't think anything made it over to the United States to any great extent. You got to remember, even the 90s or early 2000s, it's almost like being in the 1800s. Without the internet, everybody was very dependent upon mail, and you had to mail things back and forth, and you really couldn't send videos or other things. You couldn't put something up on YouTube. So the actual informing and transferring of information was very difficult to do, even if you had the will. So if you wanted to get something like this, you would have to order it from England. And a lot of people did to a certain extent, not of the Mapleton Trust stuff. I've never seen this stuff in America. But you would write to them for catalogs. You'd get stuff. I mean, Copen set up an American distributor, Bruce Copen, to sell his instruments because he became well known. But he was a very good businessman. He got his stuff out there. And even after his death, there are many companies using his name, from what I understand, illegally and everything else. But they've taken the poor old Bruce Copen's name and they've dragged it through the proverbial poo. And, of course, changed a lot of his great technology into computerized garbage. So there's so many things. But only Copen was around that I know of in the United States. There weren't really any other people out there. Some people tried to make certain units, and there has been manufacturers, particularly Lord Industries in the United States, that produced a lot of radionic equipment and was pretty public. Unfortunately, like all these groups, there wasn't really all that much money in it. And while Lord's Industry built some fairly nice units, what ultimately happened is they went out of business. I think there was a divorce involved. There were other things. They had great trouble producing anything. I had a few of their units that I never really worked with. I do have one of their 5-dial units. And they're nice little units. As I said, in terms of do they work, I don't know. The work it takes to test all this stuff is staggering. So the whole idea is that we have all of this to do. But of course, like everything else, I am one of the few people that have these instruments and always searching for new ones. So all of that goes into this is something quite exciting and interesting. And this is one of those companies, Mapleton Trust. Now, Mapleton Trust made many different instruments. A lot of them were like this. They had this kind of look to them. They were more electric in nature. So they were kind of bridging into, at that particular time, of doing things more digitalized and electric. To their detriment, by the way, because there's just no proof that any of this is radionic. This gets into the frequency realm, which, as I've stated 1,000 times, that's rife technology or frequency technology, and it's apples and oranges. They produced many different things, and I just don't think any of it became very popular. I don't think he made much money, even though at one time he was advertising in journals looking for a highly skilled and educated physicist type person that he wanted to pay $30,000 a year to work in his company, who also was a vegetarian, something we can talk about the Mapleton Trust about. So we know he was a vegetarian. I'm assuming these people are still alive somewhere, but again, tracking them down because they really don't seem to have any interest in talking to anybody else, or and finding out who's in the business and what's going on. One of the problems with the entire radionic alienated industry, taken over by Satanists now, who continue to take over in different areas and misrepresent products, and seem to be government whores as well now. So the slide down the giant hill of feces continues. Woohoo! Fortunately, I've got a nice sled and I'm kind of gliding down there. So the whole idea is that this is what. So Mapleton Trust is an interesting organization. So I'm not sure what caused their demise. I think there may have been some legal problems as well. They started stating they could do amazing things. This is what it stops. If you're going to start saying that you have magic lamp, quote, type technologies, you're going to have to prove it. And you can't prove these things because there is no magic lamp technology. Do they assist you? Do they work in your life? Do they make your life better? Do they give you an edge? Well, yes, they do to a large extent. But when you start making different claims, there are problems. I also have from them, where is it? They were one of the first, the Mapleton Trust, to make, and I did a little video on this, a Dallas. This is an anti-radiation, kind of protects you from the radiated fields of computers and TV and everything. And you slap this on a machine and then you put this on it. And this would then give you that protection. So they started to make stuff like this, and I think it's one of the first ones ever made in that nature that they did. They made other discs that supposedly protected you from colds and other things. All the things when you start getting into physical data that just is very difficult to prove if they ever did work. One of the problems with any industry is the delusional factors that you get into, that you think you know something and you can't prove it. Like some boob radionic guy now who's sick as a dog saying he can cure everybody by just using numbers. We have so much of this stuff out there. So when you get into this nonsense, that's what you run into. So we're never going to get anywhere until we seek gnosis. We got to have proof. We need to find the wisdom, what works and what doesn't. If you're going to live in a fantasy world being powered by the placebo effect and by crude low-level psychic energies, well, we're not going to get anywhere, because that means everything works and nothing works. The bottom line is that when you really get down to it, these kind of placebo effects, which a regular medical science who's failed wants to glum onto like it's the miracle treatment. Yeah, you thinky, you well, and you become well. And they fake operations. They'll cut you open and sew you back up. They'll give you fake pills. Sometimes they even say, well, this is fake. But people say, oh, you're just trying to trick me, huh, dog? We know that you're giving me some special thing here, but, Jesus is making you talk like this so you can survive in the world. So this is the kind of nonsense you run into. And, if we go down that path, then we have some serious problems. Now, we have had many, many years of research into the placebo with medications. And when medications really work, the placebos have minor to no effects. So don't think that that's a strong effect. And I can't find the results of that. One of the greatest placebo effects that have taken people in super altered states of consciousness in a psychotic, tranced out way is these actual healing preachers like Benny Hinn and psycho demon Kenneth Copeland, who in his spare times kills animals and goes safari hunting. Yeah. One of God's creatures, and I blew his head off with my 30-06, just like Jesus wanted me to. So the whole idea is that in his $50 million jet, because he's got to save the world, So the whole idea is that all of these things that go with it are quite fascinating. But these kind of altered states to the highest possible degree with people who believe 100% in what's happening and that God and Jesus are with them never get any cures whatsoever. There's not a single documented cure by Kenneth Copeland or Benny, a voodoo hen, as I call him, because he blows on people and he gets his coat off and he puts the mojo in him. Unfortunately, he ain't a voodoo guy, so he don't get no results like the voodoo guys do. So the whole idea is that these fake people are unbelievable. So the whole idea is that there's no effect from that. So to think that the placebo effect is potent, powerful, or anything else, I think is a total scam. But of course, who tells us it's powerful? The medical establishment. People that haven't cured dandruff or acne. Haven't cured anything, have they? But it's hard to cure that dandruff. It's a real bugger to get rid of, right? Yeah, right. Medical establishment. So the whole idea is we have all these problems that we have to deal with in the bigger picture. I don't believe in these effects. I don't think they work. I think they work very temporarily. You're psyched up. You feel good for a couple of weeks, and then you hit the floor like you were knocked down by an elephant. Bam! Face down into the dirt and stepped on. That's what happens after the placebo effect wears off. So we do have to understand all that. We have to understand the bigger picture here of how all this stuff is working. And what is out there. And people need to get together and work and exchange information like any scientific community does. But the problem is it's a dog-eat-dog community of people who are just trying to make money off of it and trying to survive. Well, we need to bridge that, and organizations are not doing that and never have. And of course, they're all infiltrated by bad people that do bad things and really very incompetent management. So people out there have to get out and do things of a value. And we have to know who's involved and what's going on. But the governmental intervention now and the satanic intervention into the entire industry tells us really how potent this potential technology is. And the Mapleton Trust, unfortunately, I would like to know what happened to them, what's going on, can they be located? Certainly would be interesting if you're a person who knows about the Mapleton Trust and or you were involved with it. Well, I would encourage you to contact me. Go to the upper right there. You'll find the About box. You can click on that. You'll find my actual email address, or you can go to my website and use the contact page to contact me. Because it would be nice to know, and maybe these people are around and can help with their technologies. So, but we don't know really what happened to them. As I said, they're from what I'm doing some research, it appears that they were trying to expand, had money to pay a mediocre salary to someone they were hoping was highly skilled. And apparently some sort of discreditment happened and maybe some legal action. I don't know. Anybody who knows the story, let me know. Anybody who was involved with the Mapleton Trust, if you're out there, do contact me. So it's very interesting. And of course, just to look at the unit itself, I mean, one thing that the Europeans in general like to use is these kind of plugins. The rest of it is pretty standard type plugins, but they do like these cables, which you don't see. And of course, that's an older technology as well. Most people don't use those anymore. But it certainly is interesting cable when you're dealing with the electromagnetic. You've got quite a few connectors here to pick up lots of energy instead of just copper wires. It's a fairly heavy gauge. And of course, that's the way it works with all those. So it is kind of interesting. These are stainless steel, from what I could tell. I don't think that they're in any way plated. This isn't copper plated, it's stainless steel. Stainless steel is a combination of metals. So it has some validity there. It's a fairly decent conductor, even though copper, gold plated is always better, but that's expensive. Stainless steel is dirt cheap. So it's put together well. It looks like it's made well. This is a plastic cabinet. You've got your 4 screws here. It's a plastic cabinet that, of course, goes down a little. Again, that's good. It shows there's some thinking there. This appears to be a stainless steel plate underneath here as well. You've got your typical toggle switches. These seem to be well made and nice. These are your typical dials, nothing special about them. One problem here, which is kind of annoying, and I guess when you turn this on, you'll see this jump. But if you don't have any guides on here, numbers, well, you don't know what you're dialing to, and it's very hard to say, well, I like that setting. That should be from 0 to 100, but let's say you had this dial on 50, the next one on 30. Well, you don't know what it is here. Excuse me. So if you want to repeat something, it's always a problem. So generally dials that don't have any kind of calibration on it, any kind of numbers, shows a bad way of thinking. So the whole idea is that you guesstimate it, or you're watching this meter jump while you're turning this, is not very good. I guess you could record if you turn this and it jumped to 20, that this dial was on 20, but it would be nice to have some sort of calibration here. I have to wonder why. You can use this individually. Each dial has its own on and off switch. That shows thinking yet again. And of course, this is a nice big dial here, a meter a dial there. So you can see this well. It takes up a large spot, so you don't have to squint at seeing it. That's always good. It's a problem with certain dials that their numbering system is oftentimes hard to read. So that's nice as well. It's got your main here, again, your same toggle switch, and it has a on light. These are basically idiot lights. It comes on to show you that the unit itself is on. The panel is screwed down on each side, which again is good. It's not just glued, it's screwed down. That again shows a professional building. When you only glue something down, it's not considered professional because glues are notoriously bad. So it looks like this has a screw in it, so it's holding. I don't know if that's internal or goes all the way through. It may be to hold it on there. Again, we're going to open all these up for people that are our supporters. Other than that, it's not very heavy. There's not all that much as in most of these units. It's not heavy. There's no heavy electronics in there. But in general, heavy electronics went out with crystal radios. So you don't want to run into a lot of that. So in general, of course, it has some damage here. It looks like some heat damage. I'm not sure what happened there. Doesn't hurt the unit whatsoever. So that we do understand that does nothing. It's just a cosmetic. And again, this is plastic, but it's good plastic. I mean, you're not going to break this easily. So it's a well put together. You know, Mapleton's Trust, all of their stuff that I've seen, and we will go through it, as I said, in detail. Other units have all been made well. And there is thinking behind it. They were a serious group, but like everybody, you have to be very careful when you do anything. So I don't know if it was legal action or whatever happened with Mapleton Trust, but they eventually stopped production, I believe, in the middle to early 1990s, I think. It's hard to trace this stuff. They did have a particular setup somewhere in England, a company, as I said, and were making their instruments. And anytime somebody can do that, we want to encourage, of course, anybody getting out there and doing anything in this field and doing their research. The problem is that you have to have a good foundation. Just making a box and putting electrical energies and a meter on it like this doesn't necessarily mean anything. So if you're going to make stuff that is not based in real radionics or even in a concept of it or knowing what it's all about, I don't know if you call this radionics or not. As I said, this is more of a Rife type machine. You're using frequencies. That's not radionics. I will keep repeating that until the day I die. So the whole idea is that we do need to keep that as a understanding of what's going on out there. So it certainly is interesting, and we will continue to bring these things to the public and show it to you. Just another acquisition I've gotten recently, and I have many more to come.